Happy Wednesday, March 15th. To you all, the Pittsburgh Penguins have another massive game coming up on Thursday. To start the show, I'm going to tell you how the Penguins can make it 3 in a row against the New York Rangers. It's coming up right after this drop.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at Illinois Penguins. And, of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. It is the official sportsbook of Locked On. You can make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. So let's jump right into it. Penguins Rangers Thursday night, Death Valley, a.k.a. Madison Square Garden, where, yes, it is going to be a war zone in that arena, and I'm sure it is going to be World War III on social media when these two teams meet again, because these two fan bases have been eating each other for the last, about the last year, probably 10 months to a year. Penguins have taken the first 2 meetings against the Rangers this season, both wins coming at home at Petry and Rutta. They will now do a little mini home and home, a la shortened COVID season, when they will play Thursday at MSG and then Saturday at MSG. Rangers won their last game after they lost to the Penguins. They beat the Capitals pretty bad at home just the other night. Honestly, when the Penguins lost to the Canadiens, the Rangers won. So they are now 8 points ahead of the Penguins. If the Penguins win both these games in regulation, they'll be 4 points back. But still, this is a very steep hill to climb when there is only a month left in the regular season. They are probably not going to catch them now. They needed the Capitals to beat the Rangers in regulation, and then they needed to beat the Canadiens themselves to get within 4 points heading into this home and home. That is not going to happen. Again, I said it was unlikely in my show just the other day. We all saw it here. So, best case scenario, you sweep both in regulation, you get four back, and then you have to get a little bit of help and also play better the rest of the way. But we'll have to see what happens there. Rangers, they'll come at you. Some different lines. I think they're running pairings of Benajed, Tarasenko, Kreider, Trocheck, and Kane. Kane was on the top line, I believe, in the last game. They bumped him down. Lafreniere, Philip Hedl, Capo Caco. They call that their kids line. Lafreniere really struggled to open the season, was a healthy scratch for the Rangers, but he's really been finding his game the last few weeks, starting to look, more like, the player who we thought he was going to be when he was picked in number 1 overall in the draft. Philip Hedl, he's had another strong year. Capo Caco, he's come into his own as well. It's been, slow with their kids. Top 5 picks in the draft, especially Caco and Lafreniere. But, they haven't had just, that big breakout that I think a lot of people have expected them to have. Hedl more so than the other two, but I think it's slowly starting to come. I don't know if they're ever going to be 70, 80-point players, but I think they can definitely be maybe 50 to 60-point players in this league. Jimmy Vesey, Barclay Goodrow, Tyler Mott. This is a very deep team, a very good forward group. They can run 4 lines against anybody in this league. Defensively, Keandre Miller with Jacob Trouba, Nico Mikkola with Adam Fox, Ben Harper with Braden Schneider, Ryan Lindgren. He skated after practice today, so it does not look like he is going to be playing on Thursday. We'll see if he'll play on Saturday. That is a big loss for the Rangers. They have been kind of a mess defensively without him in the lineup. Mikkola, I think, has played well next to Fox. Fox is their best defenseman. I mean, that's not, rocket science here. He's probably going to have to play half of each Rangers playoff game if they want to go on a deep run. Outside of him, even with Lindgren healthy, Keandre Miller is pretty decent. I don't really think anyone else on that, defensive core is that good. Trouba, he doesn't really move the needle much offensively or defensively. Mikkola is not bad. Braden Schneider, young player, okay offensively, but I don't really think he moves the needle that much too. They are just not that good of a defensive team, and you saw that on display in the game over the weekend. And then the Penguins will see Igor Shesterkin in this game. I would be stunned if they started Yaroslav Halak. They had an off day today. Rangers did. It will be Igor Shesterkin, as the Penguins saw in the first matchup. In terms of how the Penguins can win this one, play the way they did through the first 40 minutes. They were giving the Rangers fits in Sunday's contest, offensively, defensively, and especially, I should say, offensively. They were forcing a lot of turnovers, got some puck luck, but they were just speed bagging those guys right off base. It looked very, very similar to what we saw in the playoff series for 6 of the 7 games, I would say. I think the Rangers outplayed them mainly in game 2. If you could, I think otherwise the Penguins really speed bagged those guys in 6 of the other 7 games. But, I think that's the recipe for the Penguins to win this game. Come at them 0-100, you forecheck aggressively, you take away that cross-ice pass that the Rangers really like. That's something that Mike Sullivan has done a great job of when he's played the Rangers. And the Penguins, I know they just lost a playoff series to them, but this is usually a team that they have success against in the Mike Sullivan era. They beat them in the playoff series in 2016. Even in the years after, when the Rangers were retooling a little bit, they usually had their number. And then even the last couple of seasons before the playoff series, I know the Penguins lost 3 out of 4 to the Rangers last year in the regular season, but for the most part, this is a Rangers team that the Penguins play very well against. And Mike Sullivan has done a really good job of adjusting to Gerard Gallant's system with how, the Rangers, they like to score off the rush. That's how they run their offense. They love that cross-ice pass from the point all the way to the other side of the offensive zone. Penguins have done a really good job of taking that away, forcing the Rangers to change up their approach. Chris Letang even mentioned that, even when the Rangers adjusted to it and they were sending a few more forecheckers than normal, Mike Sullivan had his own adjustment to that. And, it was giving the Rangers, a lot of fits in that game on Sunday, outside of that, that poor play in front of the net. And then Kreider's goal, which should not have been a goal because it should have been a penalty on Vince Trocheck. The Rangers really didn't threaten that much. They had a good third period, but in the first 2 periods, Penguins played them very, very well. That is the blueprint. Obviously, they got to get some saves. I'm not really sure who's going to start in this game. If I had to guess, I think they might go to DeSmith. Would not be surprised. And he's definitely the better goalie right now. I think it would behoove Jari to maybe get a little bit of time off just because he's obviously not right. He's inconsistent as heck, yes, but I also still think he is banged up. He doesn't even look like he's 70% out there with how DeSmith has been playing, at least a little bit lately. I would go to him in this game, even though the points are very precious. The power play, obviously, that has to be better. The Penguins on the road lately, or honestly, I should say, just for this season, it's been rough. They play 4 out of their next 5 games on the road. And if you look at their overall road stats, 15-13-5 on the road, 15.2% on the power play, 77.7% on the penalty kill. Not good enough. The power play, honestly, on the road, I think it was last week when we saw this stat, they were like, 4 for the last 50 or something like that. It was good for barely 5%, whatever the heck that. I'm not a mathematician here. It was not my major in college, but you all see where I'm going with that, right? Just not good in this line. So the power play was a bit better against the Rangers on Sunday. Penalty kill actually was good against the Rangers. The Rangers can throw 2 number 1 units at you. That's going to be a big key in this one for me. Can the Penguins PK, which has been really bad as of late, slow down the Rangers power play yet again? That's a big one for me. Getting traffic in front of Igor Shesterkin, we all know it. Despite what anyone thinks of him, people talk about his on-ice antics with maybe he's a flopper or whatever. He's one of the 3 to 4 best goaltenders in hockey. Easily in my top 3. My top 3 is probably Andrei Vasilevsky, Igor Shesterkin, Ilya Sorokin. You can probably throw Connor Hellebuyck in there. Those are my top 3 goalies in this league. You can honestly maybe even interchange them. Well, I would maybe put Shesterkin as high as 2. I think Vasilevsky's a little bit better than him. But this is still one of the best goaltenders in the league. You got to get traffic in front of them, take away the sight lines. They've done a good job. They did a good job. Even when the games they lost against the Islanders, they did a decent job against Ilya Sorokin. They put, quite a few goals past him, especially in the final few games. I know he was able to make some good saves, but, they got to follow that blueprint, but do it to an even higher degree, especially with what they did in Game 3 and Game 4 in the playoff series against Shesterkin, where they really, really rattled him. those are the things I think I'm really looking for in this one. Top 6, they're going to have to probably carry the load. We're going to have to see on that. A couple other stats to throw out you here in terms of the overall head-to-head. I always love getting my Penguins PR notes. Penguins have points in 16 of their last 21 games against the Rangers, 13-5-3 in those games. They're also 17-7-3 or 17-10 in the last 27 games against the Rangers. And a win would also allow the Penguins to take the season series against them for the 6th time in the last 8 years. Again, Penguins usually play the Rangers very, very well over the years. 3-0-1 in their last 4 games against Metropolitan Division opponents. And they're also, of course, 7-2-1 over the last 10 games, but it does not feel like that. That's for sure. Players to look out for against the Rangers: Rickard Rakell, 4 goals, 11 points in 17 career games against the Rangers. Did score the one on Sunday to open the scoring on the 5-on-3. That was very nice. Chris Letang, 44 points in 61 career games against the Rangers. So those are 2 to look out for. Sidney Crosby always plays well against the Rangers. Jake Gensel does as well. Those are my main thoughts when it comes to Penguins Rangers. So we'll have to see. This is a big one. Obviously, it's going to be feisty, especially what happened on Sunday with Jacob Trouba taking on Alex Nylander. But again, clean hit. Don't have a problem with it. And then Vincent Trocheck and Evgeny Malkin exchanging their pleasantries with each other. Should be a lot of fun. We'll recap it tomorrow and then Friday with Nick Zararis when he comes on the show. We'll also preview Saturday's game as well. Coming up in the second segment, we're going to get into some injury updates from the Penguins, who I expect to see in the lineup if Jeff Petry and Jan Rutta can go. We'll also get to a couple of injury updates from Brian Burke on the GM show from today. And then a little later on, we are going to get into the GM meetings and why I think they're focusing on all of the wrong things at those meetings right now. But before we get to that, it is time to touch on FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Locked On. Believe it or not, we are close to the playoffs for the NBA season, and that means it's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Again, that is bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. There you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and 3-strain. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and Locked On. I'm back here in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at @Penguins. And, of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So, got a big injury update today on Dmitry Kulikov. The Penguins officially placed him on long-term injured reserve retroactive to the other day. I believe it was March 12th when he got hurt. So earliest he can return is April 6th. He is basically done for most, if not all, of the regular season. Again, from what I've been hearing about the injury, it is a broken foot. Anyone that's had a broken foot knows you're out for at least a month, if not maybe a little longer. Brian Burke on the GM show today did say that their hope is that he's able to come back before the regular season ends. If he comes back April 6th, the Penguins, I'm just confirming this on my phone here, that is against the Minnesota Wild at home. That has that game, Detroit, Chicago, Columbus. He would have 4 games to play before the playoffs start if the Penguins do get in. So that's the earliest he can come back. So again, he's basically done for the regular season. If he's able to come back at all, it would only be for a few games, and then we'll see if he plays in the playoffs. That means it is going to be P.O. Joseph's spot on that bottom pairing for most, if not all, of the regular season, potentially into the playoffs if they get in. He's got to play better than he did on Tuesday against the Canadiens. A couple of plays that he made, I think that was maybe a reason why the Penguins were a little bit hesitant to play him, despite them getting Kulikov from the Ducks in exchange for McGinn in that pick. Just a couple of bad defensive errors, especially on that game-winning goal early in the third period. I understand it was a really nice stretch pass. I believe it was from Justin Barron of the Canadiens, but P.O., as I explained in my Tuesday episode, he needs to jump up there and either make a play or in a perfect world, I would rather have him come back. He was just in no man's land. He just didn't commit to either of the 2 plays. He's either got to come up there, take away the pass, or he's got to peel back and go one-on-one and try to beat the Montreal Canadiens player there. That also had a really nice shot over to Smith. I believe it was Richard, excuse me, that shot it in the net. So just didn't like that play there. Thought it was some really poor defense, but I'm sure he's going to learn from it. I'm hoping that he'll be better on Thursday against the Rangers and moving forward. Also, so with Jeff Petry and Jan Rutta, obviously both left the game going into the third period. The Penguins had to play most of that period, if actually they had to play all of that third period, with 4 defensemen. Very hard thing to do. We saw it once earlier this season when the Penguins were down to 4 defensemen halfway through the game in regulation against the Capitals, remember? And if one more defenseman went down, Mike Sullivan was literally going through forwards and saying like, hey, have you played defense before? Have you played defense before? It would have gotten scary really quickly. So those kind of situations are just something that sometimes not a lot of coaches can prepare for, just because usually teams are not down to 3 defensemen during a game. But the Penguins almost happened to them again in this one. But Brian Burke did say on the GM show that it sounds like Petry and Rutta, they might be able to take warm up tomorrow. That's what at least Brian Burke said. He said, I think the medical reports are going to be in tonight, and they're going to try to see if they can give it a go and warm up tomorrow. Also, you can see if they're there for the morning skate. That's going to be the big indicator. If they're not there for the skate, then maybe the medical reports came in and it was not that good. This also can mean a call up happens for the Penguins. If someone does come up, I would assume it's going to be Mark Friedman. A couple people in my mentions came in and said, what about Ty Smith? No, he is hurt right now. He has a facial fracture. He's not playing. So it's not going to be it. It's going to be Mark Friedman, someone who can play both sides. He also loves antagonizing the Rangers. They don't call him Lord Farquaad for no reason. I remember they were wearing that shirt last season. I think it was Brian Boyle that first started wearing the shirt. Shout out to him. Great season last year for the Penguins. But if there is a call-up, I would assume he would come up from Wilkes-Barre, just because he has the most NHL experience, and I actually really like him when he's in the lineup. If Petry can't go, at least on the right side, maybe actually, yeah, if both can't go, you will definitely see Freeman come up, and I think Chad Ruhwedel will step in. If one can't go, especially if it's, Rutta or Petry on the right side, because obviously they both play on the right, then Chad can just step in. But, we'll have to see if one or both of them will be able to play in this game. No practice today for the Penguins. Took an off day to travel to New York. They will obviously play on Thursday night at Madison Square Garden. So that wraps up this small little segment where we touch on some of the injury updates, what the pairing. Well, I should say right now, if both are out, I think the pairings you see, they are going to go Pettersson, Letang. Would figure they would go Dumoulin. If both Petry and Rutta are out, it's probably going to be something like Dumoulin and Ruhwedel, if I had to guess. And then probably Joseph Friedman, something like that, just because Friedman would get called up. He can play either side. Now, if it's just one of them that's out, Pettersson, Letang, say it's Petry, I think they'll go Dumoulin, Rutta, and then Joseph Ruhwedel, which, the P.O. Joseph, Chad Ruhwedel pairing should be the full-time third pairing. I just haven't been a fan of Kulikov even when he played a little bit, and I don't think Jan Rutta's had that good of a year either. So that's why I think the pairings will look like if one or both of them are out. But if both of them are in the lineup, I think you'll see the same exact pairings that we saw on Tuesday against the Canadiens. So that wraps up this second segment. Coming up to end the show, GM meetings. What do they really need to be discussing at these meetings? And that's what I'm going to discuss coming up right after this commercial break. But before we get to that, it's time to touch on Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try Built Bar. And you're probably wondering what makes them really, really good. Well, for starters, they are covered in 100% real chocolate, and that's right, real chocolate. And they come in great flavors like peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and churro. I'm not really sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. They only have 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Now, you can just go to your local Walmart, get flavors like cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs. Same with Sam's Club. You can grab a 13 bar bucks if you want. brownie batter, churro, again, cookies and cream, double chocolate. Any of these 2 places has any of those flavors. You can thank me later when it comes to that. All right, I'm back in this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at Illinois Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. So let's get right into it. So the GM meetings are taking place this week, and it honestly seems like to me they are focusing on all of the wrong things. Like one of the things I was listening to the 32 Thoughts podcast with Jeff Merrick and Elliot Friedman, very good show. They were discussing like, oh, they're gonna shorten the preseason. Cool. I mean, that's an okay change, but I don't think it's anything, breathtaking. They're focusing on adding more coaches challenge, like to puck over the glass, and then interference and stuff. And it's like, I don't think we need a coach's challenge for a puck over the glass penalty. How about you just have a sky judge that can review it? I just don't think we need another coaching challenge because, again, that slows the game down even more. I am a bit of a proponent for replay in sports. I want the calls to be correct, but at the same time, also try not to sound like a massive hypocrite here. But, with how the refs' standards are and how they just screw up the easiest of calls, would this really help? I doubt it. It's the NHL here. They have some of the worst officials I've ever seen in any professional sports setting. So I'm not really sure that's going to help that much at all. They're speaking today how the cap is only going to go up by $1 million next season. No other league is dealing with this. Why is it only the NHL? NFL salary cap goes up by like $100 million every year. NBA's has skyrocketed. Baseball doesn't even have a cap, but teams are spending money like it's nobody's business, especially the New York Mets. Why is the NHL having so much problems? I understand that COVID hit the league really hard, but we're out of way of the worst of the pandemic. That's mostly basically gone at this point. We're obviously still gonna have COVID for forever, I will say, but with compared to where we were 2 years ago, it's night and day, to be honest. So I just don't get why this cap is only going up $1 million. You have the Arizona Coyotes problem. How is that not being discussed at the GM meetings? I understand that maybe it's more of a board of governors ownership stuff, but that should be discussed at the GM meetings. How the Coyotes are basically a money laundering business. A third of their freaking salary cap is tied up to players who don't even play in the league anymore. How is that right? That's just not right at all. I think another thing that they should be discussing at the GM meetings as well, please, for the love of God, can we get rid of this playoff format and throw it in the trash? I hate this playoff format. I mean, I've spoken to plenty of people who cover teams for other markets, cover the Penguins in this market, and they've talked to players who they hate the playoff format. Heck, we just saw Sidney Crosby and a few other players they were asked at the All-Star game about the playoff format. They all said they would rather do the 1 versus 8 system. But you got Gary Bettman today saying like, our research over the last month shows that, there really hasn't been that much movement. We really like the playoff format. We really have had no complaints about it. Straight up gaslighting right there. I mean, what? Even Alan Walsh, a player agent, I'm going to load up this tweet right here. He's obviously one of the most outspoken agents in the NHL, and he saw what Bettman said, and Alan even said, I don't know one player who prefers the current system over 1 versus 8. And I believe him. I don't know how anyone could like this divisional playoff format. I mean, I guess I get it because if you like more rivalries, okay, I can listen to you a little bit on that. But for me, I'm tired of watching the same teams play each other in the playoffs. And Toronto and Tampa are going to get sick of each other at the end of this series. We all saw Penguins Rangers 3 seasons in a row in the playoffs. We saw the same for Penguins Capitals. I don't need to see those series for a while. I'd rather them play new teams. It looks like the Penguins are probably going to get their wish this year. They haven't played Carolina since 2009 in a series. They haven't played Boston since 2013 in a series. New Jersey, they haven't played them in a very, very long time. So you go back way, 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 way further than that. So I'm just, I understand that they want to do the rivalries thing. I get it. But the format is also, it takes away, your success for the regular season. You're pitting like 2 of the 5 best teams in the league. Oh, one of them has to be out in the second round. I'd rather watch 2 of those teams play in a conference final or a Stanley Cup semifinal than something like that. So that's another point of emphasis that I would be discussing at the GM meetings. Obviously, Arizona, I would also, this is probably some wishful thinking for me. I would start really talking about the shootout. I got triggered again tonight when I saw Evgeny Kuznetsov make that same stupid move that all bad EA Sports NHL players do in online shootouts, where you come in so slow, you don't really move, the goalie stands no chance, you fire it to the opposite side of the net, goal. He did it again tonight. I don't know how you can have a shootout and allow that to be like not banned. Honestly, again, I would take rid of the shootout overall. I would add maybe 5 more minutes of 3-on-3 overtime. I think players can handle it. Get creative. Maybe you can have a shootout after 10 minutes of 3-on-3, 4-on-4 overtime. I would keep 3-on-3. But you would see a drastic decline in the show. You probably could just get rid of a shootout at that point, because there would maybe be, 10 games that go to a shootout, to be honest. Again, those are the main things I'm looking at. I'm glad they're not doing expansion, though. I don't think they need to expand right now. Everything else I think is pretty okay. Well, there's obviously some problems. I think that the GMs need to have the officials try to be more accountable, or at least push the league to have them be more accountable. Make them available after games. That would be a big step for how they've blown calls and that sort of stuff. Also, I wonder if the loser point is ever going to be a point of discussion. You have teams that are literally in the playoff race solely because of loser points. You take those away, what do the standings look like? I don't know if they'll ever get rid of that, but it's something that I would potentially look at. That's for sure. But that wraps up this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I really appreciate all of you listening to this one. A little bit of a different episode today. Did have the preview, of course, but wanted to get into some other topics as well, especially the GM meetings. For tomorrow and Friday, we will be fully recapping the game against the Rangers and getting you all set for Saturday's rematch at Madison Square Garden, as these will be the final 2 games of the season against the Rangers. Most likely, I don't think they're going to play again, even if they get in the playoffs, because I don't think this is going to be the 2-3 matchup, and I don't think both of those teams will get as far to the point where they will be playing in the second or third round. I just don't really see it at this point. But again, thank you all so much for listening. I hope you all really enjoyed it. We're also 43 subs away from 1,000 on YouTube. If you haven't subbed yet, please go do it. Tell your friends. Almost 40 away now from one of my biggest goals for this channel. Of course, please like, rate, and subscribe to the podcast on Apple and Spotify. Let me know your thoughts about what I talked about in this one in the comments, and you can message me on Twitter and other social media platforms. Again, thank you all so much for listening. I always appreciate it. Let's do this again on Thursday.